I jumped in the back of a cab at the end of the day and had a big plastic Tupperware box that you and I used to carry around with coloured paper and marker pens and sticky notes, and I threw it in the back of the cab, and I got chatting to the cab driver and about the day that I'd had, and he said, "Oh, right, so you're some kind of genius then?" I was like, "Yeah." And he went, "With a box." So if he's listening, which I doubt he is, thank you very much, cab driver, who took me home that night for the name. I often ask the client, you tell me what you would do here if I were to swap round and be you and you be me. And that's easier for them to answer than say, well, give yourself the advice, or what do you think you should do? Just kind of that trickery of words. That's something that unlocks people a lot of the time. So it's intangible. I can't send you a sample. Like, I have to build a picture in your head. So, but as soon as I say that, you can start to feel excitement, can't you? Or you can start to build a picture in your own mind of what it will be like hanging out on holiday with me in a hot tub. So a painful experience to go through for both me and the client and the people that I was working with. No, it was a tough one, that one. Didn't like it, but we've all got our I think we've all got our experiences and our frustrations of trying to work during that time. But they're selling hammers, aren't they? So you're talking about the hammer. So I'm selling you coaching, hammer. I'm selling you design thinking, hammer. I'm telling you consulting services, hammer. So it's all about them. No. What is that hammer there to do? I've taken my kids on a few projects. They now understand what I do, but I think they just think that I just...
Hello, you beautiful people, and welcome to the Solo Source podcast. My name is Joeri, and on this show, I have honest conversations with people who work for themselves, the solopreneurs, independent professionals, and self-employed out there. They share real stories, lessons learned, and maybe even some practical things that you can take forward on your own solo journey. On today's episode, I am joined by my friend and ex-colleague Andy Reid, founder of The Genius Box. Andy helps executive teams turn strategy into collective decision and real execution, because as he puts it, most strategies do not fail in the boardroom. They fail afterwards. We talk about why nobody cares about what you do and what you should say instead, how to spot the real tension behind a client's problem, and the power of bringing things to life in a way that everybody understands. As always, I'll be back with some of my thoughts, maybe a couple of questions at the end of this episode, but for now, enjoy my conversation with Andy Reid. Andy Reid, I know you. Many people in the world know you. For the people who don't know you, who are you and what's been your story up to here? Light question.
Yeah, I like the second bit. What's been my story to get me here? I mean, how long is this podcast? Let's make it quick. I would call myself a program manager. I design and deliver big programs for large organizations. And that's all about aligning leaders, embedding a commitment into the organization, and making sure that we've also embedded change in that organization. So that's what I do. And I don't think my route here is that particularly interesting. What's the phrase squiggly? People are always going on about squiggly careers, aren't they? Everyone's got a squiggly career, but mine started off studying design, roughly. Then I was a teacher. Then I went to the world of consulting, where I met you. And then I danced around a few experiments and ended up starting Genius Box about 15 years ago.
You and I met at What If Innovation, which at that time, if I say it correctly, I think those are their words, was at that time the largest independent innovation agency in the world. How did you end up there?
Oh, that was serendipity. Yeah, 2002, 2003, I think. I was involved with the Qualifications and Curriculum Authority, which is it's an organization back then that oversaw the design and delivery of examinations in the country. So I was a teacher at the time, and I was also working with the QCA, and we were involved in a book publishing project. We wanted to get more textbooks into the hands of students, and I was one of a team of authors, and I had to go out into the world and speak to real businesses as opposed to fake businesses. I had to go and speak to people in business so we could bring back those case studies into the textbook for students to learn and understand and know and understand what was going on in the world.
Can you help me out? I'm trying to get this podcast to more people who really need to listen to this. So if you can, I would love it if you left a like, left a little comment if you want, or share this with somebody who needs to watch this, if you're watching this on YouTube, you need to listen to this on places like Spotify and Apple. Anyway, I really appreciate it. Let's get back to the episode.
And one of the businesses I met was a design company called PDD. And working at the design company PDD was a lady called Kirsty. And she and I hit it off. And it just so happened that Kirsty moved to What If in 2004, I think. And we just stayed in touch. One day, for no reason or another, I just remembered her name and I fired off an email. She replied back and says, yes, I am at What If. Come in and see what I do now. So I came in and saw what they did. And one thing led to another. There was a conversation to say, would I like to join the team? The insight was I was good at bringing to life and explaining things to kids and breaking down concepts and sticking it into chunks. And they said, that would be a great skill for us to have in the team because we need to break things down into chunks and share it with adults. What you bring is that external perspective. And I was a bit worried. Actually, I said, well, I'm a teacher. I don't know anything about you guys and your world of innovation. So you're going to have to teach me and help my learning accelerate. So that was a challenge that we both accepted. So in return for being schooled by them, I would help the team break up what it was that they were doing and helping us serve our clients better.
So I know you were a teacher. I've never seen you as a teacher.
Yeah.
How would you describe yourself as a teacher? Actually, you know what? Let me rephrase that.
Yeah,
How would your students describe you as a teacher?
They would have said I was upbeat, positive, loud, quite can-do. I wouldn't have said rebellious or anything. I think they would have said that I would have come at it in an interesting way. I think they would have said I would have made my lessons interesting and animated. I'm thinking back in answering that question, what they were like and what I was like. So there were parts of my job that I had to do and it was hard and it was a challenge because it wasn't anything to do with the subject matter. I enjoyed the subject matter, but part of the job was a bit administrative. That wasn't very exciting. But looking back, I think that the kids would have said I cared about them, and I did. You spend a lot of time as a teacher with the same group of pupils, and particularly in some schools where you saw them grow up through the years. I would spend an awful lot of my daylight time with them. So I saw them grow up. So I knew loads and loads about them. That kind of level of, I'm going to say this word carefully, intimacy with them mattered to me. And I think that I would like to have thought that showed up.
How does that translate to how you deal with your kids, for instance? How you are with your kids? Do you take some of that forward? And how you raise them? I mean, it's probably very different than your own kids.
Yes. Yeah. There is an old English phrase about good teachers don't make good parents or something. It's not a very well-known phrase. I'm sure I'm getting it wrong, but I've noticed I didn't raise my kids as I did in the way that I taught my students back in the day. So I haven't been a teacher of kids in over 20 years. But there are elements of explaining things to my kids that might be a bit teachery when it came to their subjects or their homework. But teaching and parenting are definitely different things. But to be a parent, there's an element of you have to teach. But to be a teacher, you can't be a parent. Yeah, you wouldn't be parental when you're teaching, but the other way round works. Although I take being a parent seriously, I don't take parenting that seriously because I watch other parents parent their kids, and I know every child is precious, but I take a kind of philosophical approach. I'm not the first dad in the world, and I won't be the last. So it's not see some parents going at their kids as if it's like, this is the most important thing in the world and it's going to be so important that I get this right. And it's like, nah, you're not the first and last parent to go on this journey. So take it easy on yourself. And I'm sure the kid will pick up on that. If you find an anxious child, not very far from an anxious parent.
If you had that mug that says, best dad ever or most ambitious dad ever or strictest dad ever, what would your adjective say?
Yeah, yeah. Most inconsistent dad ever. Where's my mug?
Yeah.
I'd lose it. I'd break it. Yeah.
You break your kids?
Yeah, I'd lose them. Break and lose the kids.
What are some of the things you've taken from, let's say, being a teacher? What are some of the things you've taken from that period and applied now?
So one of the elements is breaking everything down into the smallest number of parts and points and just layer things up, just ladder it up. And then that learning and progression builds on the previous step and the previous foundation. So that's one. The other one is metaphors, re-expressions. It looks a bit like this, or have you thought about that? Or this reminds me of a story, or or a song, or a picture, or a piece of artwork. There is always something a bit like the thing you're trying to solve for. And if people can't understand the problem directly, then they can connect to an adjacency. That's a useful skill. What else? Draw it, write it, act it out. All of these different ways of engaging with the challenge and expressing it to yourself helps. And if all else fails, I often ask the client, you tell me what you would do here if I were to swap round and be you and you be me. And that's easier for them to answer than say, well, give yourself the advice. Or what do you think you should do? Just kind of that trickery of words. That's something that unlocks people a lot of the time.
You talked about the Genius Box. You started the Genius Box 15 years ago. What is the Genius Box?
The box is a metaphor for the situation you're in. There's that old idiom of we need to think outside the box, but the box is, of course, the business or the project or the team. And it's getting smaller and smaller and tighter each year that goes on. Business isn't actively designed for conflict, but of course, that's where people find a lot of conflict. You're struggling for resources, you're struggling for time, you're struggling for people. So you're always being asked to deliver more with less. These cliches are true because that's the situation. So that box is the context in which people find themselves in, and that gives them that false sense of what is and isn't possible. We're on the outside, though, aren't we? Well, I am. You are. We can see the box for what it is. It just so happens I've got a clear box in front of me. Look at that. That's useful. So people are sitting here inside the box. We can see it from the outside. But the genius is, of course, them, right? They're always going to know their business better than me. They're always going to have more understanding of what's going on in their business than I have. So if we can unlock people's thinking and excite them and align them and inspire them to think a little bit differently, then that's going to unlock that necessary piece of genius to break through that box. And the caveat of that is that I don't want the genius to be labeled with, well, it's all about being creative and explosive. Sometimes that genius is with a soft G. It's just that little element of difference that can work around and reach around and hack away through that perception of what the box is. So that's the long, rather elegant description of what the Genius Box is. The real name came from a cab driver on my first piece of work. I jumped in the back of a cab at the end of the day and had a big plastic Tupperware box that you and I used to carry around with coloured paper and marker pens and sticky notes, and I threw it in the back of the cab, and I got chatting to the cab driver and about the day that I'd had and how I was looking much getting home. And he said, "Oh, right, so you're some kind of genius then?" I was like, "Yeah." And he went, "With a box." So if he's listening, which I doubt he is, thank you very much, cab driver, who took me home that night for the name.
Where do you go from there then? So now you've got a box, you got an idea, and you have a name. How do you get it out there to other people?
Well, I didn't start building websites and letterheads and sticking some kind of brand or marketing campaign in front of the core idea, because that was all merging. Many people who have a business at the start, probably like many people listening to this, it's not formed, it's not crystallized. It's just a sense of, I want to do this. I'm frustrated with X and I want to do Y. I'm tired of this way of working and I want to do that kind of working. But they haven't articulated a story. They haven't got examples of what that looks like. So then they can't write a manifesto about it. So I was aware of that and didn't start the big publishing campaign. I just concentrated on the one client that I had, like Jerry Maguire, and said, what are the things that you are frustrated with? And I will work with you. I will partner with you, and I will just do whatever I can to get you from A to B. Because I didn't have a methodology. I didn't have some kind of 5-piece process or anything that I can point at. And I remember distinctly sitting in front of one client and they said, right, so tell me what you do and how do you do it? And it was at that moment I realized, well, I don't know what I do and I can't tell you how we do it. So it was that moment of saying, yeah, intention isn't enough. But with that intention came work. With that intention came repeat business with the client, and then starting to articulate and write down, well, this is the actual approach and this is what we've got here. So it took a long time, and it took a lot of faith with the people that I worked with as well. I think the clients went out on a limb. So the only thing they could lean on was their previous experience with me, the warmth of a previous relationship rather than some leading methodology.
Do you remember what you answered when somebody asked you that the first time? What do you do? Do you remember what you said?
No, I think I know, but I know it had to change lots of times. And the answer's consistent now. But back then, I was all over the shop because I wanted to tell them 1,000 stories and show them 1,000 proof points, which was probably coming from a point of, no, I am good enough given all your other alternatives. So I can't tell you what I said then. Therefore, it must have been pretty fleeting and pretty flexible and probably pretty intangible. Oof, that was a good question.
You once told me that it took you at least 2 years to learn how to speak about what you do. I remember you telling me that. I remember where we were. You're like, it's taking me time. And now me building the solo sauce, which is a new concept, it's the same.
Yeah.
A lot of people I work with have the same. They find it hard to describe what they do and often result to, I build websites or, I sell pictures. I've got a hammer. Why is it so hard to figure out what it is that you do?
Because you're in it, and your hammer is one of many things that you have at your disposal. So it could be, to use that metaphor, I have a hammer, I build websites. I also have a chisel because I'll help you think about your next proposition. Oh, and I do this, and I do this, and I do this. And that's where things start to blur. And I think it's hard to describe what you do when you first set out because you're keen to do everything. That's my insight, is that you're keen to do everything. And it's only when you accept projects that you realize aren't for you that you can then start to say no to them in the future and cut them away. And what's left is the thing you do. But the other learning is that you've got to stop talking about what it is you do, because nobody cares about what you do. And you're also one of many thousands of other people who do exactly the same. So you have to think about what's in the client's world that they need, what's their pain, what's their tension, what's their friction, because no one needs another guy with a hammer.
And that hammer, which we can all buy at the same hardware store. Basically.
Yes. Yeah. I like this. I like the phrase that the only folk that made money in the gold rush were the people that sold shovels.
Yeah.
That's neat. The more you think about that, the more you realize that the guys that were selling shovels in the gold rush didn't have to explain what a shovel did, because the shovel was the way. The shovels sold themselves because everybody else was trying to do something over here. I think there's a lot of shovel sellers at the moment shoveling shit, probably. But think about it. If you lean into that old saying, I think that will help you realize not what it is that you bring and offer the world, because that's what's not needed. It's what the clients need. That's the thing that matters. If you focus on that, then it makes your story so much easier to latch onto.
Now, that's easier said than done. How do you find that out? Because you could say, well, let's find out what the client needs. How do you go about doing that? I mean, you could just ask them. But as we just said, sometimes it's very hard to articulate something. So how do you find that out?
Well, I'm looking for the tensions. So my tension that builds around my business is that strategy doesn't fail in the room. So it fails at month 3. Everything makes sense to senior leaders in their teams when they're in the room, when they're crafting the strategy, when they're agreeing and nodding and going through the 10K paper. That all makes sense. Fades and dies and starts to creep about month 3, when that strategy's gone into the workplace and now it's in the hands of other people to deliver it. That's the tension. That's my speak. That's where I work. I work in that space. That's the problem that I can start to solve for. So my entire business and the people that work with me are all around that one tension. All makes sense in the room, starts to fade 3 months later. So find your client tension, and you can experiment with it, and you can ask your clients outright, but you can also use your observations to validate that tension and start to build your proposition around it. So spot the tension. Treat it like an insight project.
What is that? What is an insight project?
So we're trying to find the neat explanation that's building and overlapping, differing, conflicting behaviors and explains why it is people say this, but they do that. So if you're out trying to uncover the motivations and the reasons behind people's behavior, then you're onto an insight. You're onto something that's energetic enough for you to start getting rather animated and coming up with ideas. I sell workshops isn't going to get a senior leader of a FTSE organization knocking on my door. I bring creativity and inspiration to your business. That's not going to bring a senior leader to my door. I'm on a mission to inspire. That's not going to bring a senior leader to my door. These are all the things I've tried, by the way. I'm incredibly passionate about facilitating and facilitators, and there's a real low standard in facilitation. We need to bring that up. Really interesting, Andy. That's not really going to help me as a senior leader of this FTSE business. I've noticed that strategy works in the room, but about 3 months later, it just drifts. That's got my interest, Andy. Thank you. Yeah, that's something that my leadership team really struggles with. Tell me more. Boom. All right. So there's an element of trial and error, but you're teasing out what's going on for them and you're not talking about what you're passionate about. That's the hardest thing, I think, if you're starting your own business, it's not all about you. Swap it round. Yeah. Swap it round.
I think a bunch of people listening might be saying, well, that's great for you, Andy. You've been at this for maybe a little bit longer than I've been at this. How do I get a foot in the door? Like, I'm even speaking to the right people, because the conversation at a mid-level management is very different from senior level management. How do you work your way to the right people? Is it just a matter of time? Is that networking? Is there a secret sauce in there somewhere?
But they're talking to someone, aren't they? They're talking to someone. So you're mapping out who is describing the problem in the organization, who is in a position to take responsibility for the problem to be solved in the organization, who is the person that's going to champion you when you're not in the room, back in the organization. And 99% of the time, organizations are in a position to go and commission an answer to a problem they have because they're too busy running their business, you know? So there's an element, I think, of persistence and consistency with the people that you speak to. If you start dancing around trying to find someone, then you're not delivering consistency, which is the very thing you're fighting against and the very thing that you're promising in your proposition when it comes to solving your problems. Well, we'll bring a consistent approach. Yeah. So yeah, have faith, keep speaking to the people that you know, and the truth will out. Yeah. The truth will out.
Is there any way that people can learn how to speak to people better, if there was such a thing? In this context, so in finding out what's going on, is there stuff that they can learn? Are there techniques? Is there frameworks that you use?
I don't have a smart answer for that other than, oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, don't overthink it. If it's true, and that challenge that you believe exists in the organization is something that you've spotted, to keep presenting that particular insight or observation you have to your client, your contact, and keep the conversation going. It really is as simple as that. I wouldn't start overlaying something with the 6 steps of getting to the truth, blah, blah, blah. It's just another model that you're going to forget or cock up or gets in the way of a genuine conversation. We're energetic people. We can smell something that's off. We're social animals. So use your instinct. Use the previous time when you felt confident about something and calibrate that against how you feel now. I think the best theories ride on the common tide of common sense, don't they? So if you think that you're overthinking it, you probably are.
What I like about this is if you do find that pain point or something that's really going on, or that gets their goat, or that really gets their ears perked up, I always tell my folk that should be the foundation for your content as well. Whether you're creating articles or you're creating videos, too many people talk about the hammer, like, hey, I've got a hammer, like, rather than figure out what people really want, which is to hang up their accolades so they can look clever in front of other people. And the more they find out what's really going on, the better they can use content to then tickle those pain points. People go, you're spot on. Now I want to have a conversation.
Yeah, and it's relevant. So folk that are listening to this many of them be content creators. I'm not a content creator. But the content creators are building content that's relevant for their audience, and over a period of time, that is a go-to source of information. That will, in and of itself, have a particular energy around it that will grab people's attention over a period of time. And there's no harm in dropping that content to the people that you believe that matters to. That's relevant. But remember, 99% of the time, they're not in a buying position. But you can still be relevant, can't you? So I think that's a nice way to experiment and validate some of your tensions and your hypotheses. But I wouldn't get disheartened. I can imagine a lot of people would be, oh my God, I've sent this amazing piece of content to someone and they just ignored it. Yeah, that's going to happen a lot.
Yeah. And it's a great way to validate, because if it does resonate, people will respond. It's very simple. The internet is very unforgiving in that regard. People tell me all the time, but Joeri, what if I create an article and and nobody looks at it? Or what if I create a video? I go, don't worry, mate, nobody will look at your stuff.
Yeah,
just get going anyway.
Get
going. By the time people do notice you a bit, you've got some miles on the clock, and then you speak.
Yeah, and that when they find you, they'll go, my goodness, I can't believe I've left this gem uncovered for so long. Look at all this great content that this character has created for me. It'd be foolish to think that the first thing you write and send into the world is going to be lapped up by everybody in the world because they're all sitting at home with an ashtray on their knee waiting for you to drop. That's just not going to happen. So if you give up, I suppose that maybe tells you a sign that you don't really believe the thing you're passionate about. So it works both ways.
You'd be amazed how many people put a bit of content online who think they are God's gift to technology, innovation, whatever it is. Projects. You've worked on lots of challenges over the years. What is one of your favorite challenges you've worked on and why?
It was over the lockdown period. So physically, the team and I were over here, but our client was over in the USA. So we had a time difference to play with. There was also a team in Australia. So we had to do online sessions in order to facilitate this project. And we would stay up into the wee small hours and do the Australia team, and then get a few hours kip, do the stuff with the team in the Great Britain and Europe, and then hand the baton over to the folk in the USA. So there was this ongoing conversation that never stopped. And that turned into quite a lovely creative platform for that project. So whilst we were asleep or another team was asleep, somebody somewhere was working on that project. So that started to generate its own energy in theatre. And what I liked about the project was it blew away a bit of a myth around teamwork, is that people get excited about teamwork. Let's put people in a room and they'll generate loads of things and it won't work online. But my learning and my discovery was the opposite. Actually, when folk are online and they're working away and the only contact that they've got with a colleague is a moving cursor, it generated more output because the stationary cursor was exposed. So that individual would be seen not to have made any contributions. There wouldn't be any comments. There wouldn't be any additional sketches. There wouldn't be any additional figures on a sheet. So we could see who was involved because we could see the content being created. That's usually lost when you're in a room and it's physical, because you get strong characters doing all the work, or you get people that are quite happy for other people to take over. And that kind of pedestrian passenger attitude can hide in a room, whereas it was exposed online. And that was fabulous. So I fell in love with online facilitation for quite a while because I knew I could guarantee output more so than the output in a room, which was traditionally where I'd cut my teeth, going back to my teaching days. Of course, that makes sense. 45 minutes, draw on the walls, boom, you've got stuff because you had to. So there was lots of learnings around interaction online. And the brief itself was quite a commercial brief. This organization wanted to generate a new proposition. It wanted to generate a proposition worth something like 20 million in new revenue by the end of the year, but we ended up having 5 or 6 propositions as a result of that, hundreds of millions of dollars in potential revenue. And these propositions, plural, got signed off and carried on through. So for the client itself, they were delighted, and all of that, all done online. And it was only a few years later I met a few of them face to face, and it's always, you must have had this a lot, Joeri. You meet someone face to face when you spent time with them online. You're, oh my God, you're taller or shorter than I imagined. You look different. I've got obvious thing to say, but that was a great project. I like that one a lot.
What was the worst one? One of the worst ones, and why?
There was one, a similar time. It was off the back of a face-to-face project, and we carried it on. They tried. Look at that passive language. I tried to carry it on online, just didn't work. I found the whole inability to interact with people frustrating. I couldn't hear them, they couldn't hear us. So there was this ability wasn't quite working. The time, the whole design of it didn't allow enough interaction. It's a car crash in slow motion, and I could feel myself losing my temper, which manifested in pretty poor behavior on my side. And I sort of lost awareness of how I was coming across on the camera, and quite rightly, the client was not impressed. So, mea culpa.
Were you dismissive? A bit.
Yeah, I was dismissive. Yes, I was dismissive, cross, truculent, arrogant, angry, all the bad stuff, all the just personal frustrations of the situation probably hijacked me. And looking back on it, it wasn't my finest hour. I'm not pleased that it happened, but in many ways, because that happened, it's prevented the team and I going there again. I can spot it with others a long time before it goes off. Touch wood, hasn't happened again. So a painful experience to go through for both me and the client and the people that I was working with. No, it was a tough one, that one. Didn't like it, but we've all got our I think we've all got our experiences and our frustrations of trying to work during that time. Yeah, I think that particular project might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, manifesting in lots of little outbursts.
You and I sell intangible things. Is that a fair way to describe it?
No, I'm selling, there's a value to something that you can perceive in the future. So it might be intangible, the promise of a fabulous holiday, and that, come with me on a holiday, Joeri, let's go hang out in a hot tub. So it's intangible. I can't send you a sample. Like, I can't send you a piece of the hot tub for you to test right there. I have to build a picture in your head. So, but as soon as I say that, you can start to feel excitement, can't you? Or you can start to build a picture in your own mind of what it will be like hanging out on holiday with me in a hot tub. So I'm talking to clients about, I am going to partner with you to align your leaders around your strategy. I'm going to get them to commit to embedding that strategy, and I'm going to engage your people so they build structures to make sure that strategy comes true. The only way we're going to do it is if you commission the team and I to deliver that for you. But there's a tangibility to that story that they can buy into, because it speaks to the opposite of what they have at the moment, because they haven't got alignment, they haven't got commitment, and things aren't embedded in their organization. So it might not physically exist yet, but I still believe that there's an element of tangibility to the promise.
Speaking of you and I in a hot tub, I can imagine that, because I think we have a picture of us in Bali in a hot tub. Maybe there's just a swimming pool, I think.
Nice.
So I do have a bit of an idea what that's like with you.
Yeah. It's a family
dodgy
show.
The reason I asked that is because a lot of these listeners here will sell what they think is intangible. What I mean to say with that one is they might not sell, whatever, water bottles or cameras or something.
Yeah.
They'll sell coaching. They'll sell design thinking. They'll sell services, something like that. And what I think a lot of them really struggle with right now is to, one, articulate what it is that they do, and then to sell that.
But that goes back to what you said earlier. So I'm just writing that down. So they're saying, So design thinking, coaching.
Yeah.
What was the other?
They think they're selling intangible things.
Yeah. But they're selling hammers, aren't they? So you're talking about the hammer. So I'm selling you coaching, hammer. I'm selling you design thinking, hammer. I'm telling you consulting services, hammer. So it's all about them. No. What's the design thinking there to do? That's where we go back to asking and validating, what is that hammer there to do?
I've learned a lot from you over the years when it comes to business development, how you speak about yourself, how you negotiate, how you pitch things, how you make things real. So for instance, rather than selling people, bring something to give more color to life, or bring it to life for the clients. For people here who might not be as experienced as you are in terms of business development, what are some tips or what are some strategies you could give them?
Thank you for the compliment. It's always good to get buttered up, isn't it? Let's do things in threes. Three's a good one. Three's the magic number. There's a song in that. Is there an internal champion in the organization who can speak positively about the thing you're going to do in your absence? And if not, find that person. So most, if not all of our work is repeat business or recommendation. So we don't do any outward bound marketing. Hey, come look at, here's my hammer. So we don't do any of that. So someone else in the organization who can speak positively about you is a good thing. That's going to really tip the balance in your favor. The other one is less is more. So stop telling everybody what you do because it's just more hammers. I think it's about what is it that client needs, and think about how they can't get what it is that they need. That's easy to say on a podcast. It's probably harder to do in real life, and everybody's going to have a bit of a kind of nuance to that particular context. Step inside their shoes because you're one of 30 emails. I had a client the other day who told me they went to a meeting. They came out of the meeting. It was only a couple of hours long, that meeting, and they had 60 odd messages waiting for them. WhatsApps, texts, emails, voice notes. And it's going to be a mixture of team things, personal things, stuff above them, stuff below them. So you're trying to get noticed in that mess. I said, well, what did you do? He said, I just delete them. And I imagine that if it's really important, that person will ring again, you know? So you're just trying to cut through all of that noise. So think about what they need. And when you do, it's less is more. Stop telling. You're not selling pizza. All right. Over a period of time, the confidence will shine through because you're being true and simplistic to that offer. That calm consistency is what's going to sell you. You banging on about the amazing hammer that you've got is just another thing that's going to get deleted.
You once told me a Ferrari doesn't need 20 pages to tell you how good it is, or Lamborghini, one of the cars.
Yeah, there's two about that. Enzo Ferrari said, I don't sell cars. I sell engines. So the car's free. I need the car to put the engine in. So what's he saying there? Actually, he's appealing to power. He's talking about, I'm delivering you power and performance. Power and performance are intangible, but a car's rather elegant. But I like the twist to the point about it doesn't need 20 pages to kind of sell it itself. You don't see any adverts for Ferraris on the telly because people who want Ferraris don't watch TV. Okay. When people want a particular type of sports car, they'll go and find a Ferrari. And in the world of Toyota Prius, is that who makes the Prius? You're just going to confuse yourself and confuse other people by saying the wrong thing and leading with the hammer. Okay. So just keep it clean and speak about and listen to what it is that the client needs.
When it comes to having better conversations, groups of people around these kind of things, aligning leaders, you've got a fantastic book, which I've got up here.
Oh, look at that. That'll brag.
It's called This Is Not the Way, where not is in a different font, different color, because now it looks like it is the way. Fantastic book. Tell me a bit more about where did this come from?
Well, you're in it, which is lovely. So it's smart people who are all different about the way that they will go and design and deliver programs and projects. What's interesting, I imagined a little thought experiment of mine. If I put all 12 of you, I think there's 12 of you in here. If I put you all in a room and gave you a brief, you'd pull each other apart, right? You'd come at it in 12 completely different ways. So therefore, there can't be the one omnipotent, consistent way of designing and delivering a solution to people. So let's celebrate different. So this came about after a few projects. There was a pattern emerging. Clients are saying, we love what the team have done. We love what you've done. There are some of the time, you should write a book. You should put that down. Okay. Now I was resistant at first because there is always a percentage of every project that's new and fresh and actually spontaneous. Some of the stuff, and you've been there with me, a few days into the project, you're designing it based on the day you've just had. So what we're going to do tomorrow based on the day we've had. Let's throw the plan up. Let's do this instead. We were zigging and now we're going to have to zag. And as a result of that, we go to a new and exciting place. Yeah. So the whole journey of a creative arc, you can't know on day one where you're going to head to if you're truly being creative and innovative. You've got a rough idea of what you want to say and do, but you can't sit there and go, and on day 10, the answer will be this. That's just crazy. So to write out a book with all the instructions to get there just felt antithetical, just didn't make sense. But what I did spot was time and time again, some of the same elements of a project would always occur. There was always a need to fully understand what was going on with the client and their problem and diagnose it. There was always a need to understand what the consumers or customers or internal stakeholders wanted. So I'd call that the insight stage. As a result of that, there was always a need to generate thoughts and ideas, a response, a solution to what those needs were. And there was always a need, having got lots of options, to choose one. All right. So how are we going to actually implement or make a decision about what idea to go forth? So those 4 parts of the project journey were consistent and they would always crop up in the work that we did. So that's what's in the book, are a handful of some tried and tested tools and techniques with a smattering of stories and examples of how to use them that you can use in the design and delivery of your own project. There's enough there for you to go, great, I don't need to look at that book again. I'm going to come up with my own particular tool in order to get to the bottom of this. All of that stuff I've stolen and nabbed and copied from people that I've watched and gone, no, I really like that. That's smart and clever. And the best way that can be used is to people to use that book and then develop their own technique.
Yeah. Don't we all? We all nab stuff and connect it and put it together. What is it again? Creativity is no more than putting 2 things that do not seem to match and put them together.
Sticking, that's all it is. Okay, that's it. Boom. And to build on that, the creative people are really comfortable and happy and have got into the habit of doing that all the time. Whilst we all have that innate power to be creative and that creativity sits within us, I don't believe that all of us are suitable to design and deliver and facilitate that process for others. So I used to lead with that, but that's a hammer. Okay, that's a hammer. So behind the scenes, I will take responsibility for designing and delivering the creative endeavors to get from A to B, but I don't lead with that when I'm speaking to my clients. They don't care about creativity and facilitation. What they care about is making their business more efficient or more profitable or less costly or changing their culture or whatever. So don't lead with the hammer of creativity. That's my magic. I nearly said magic sauce, but that's you. That's my magic juice to kind of get going. In the book, I'm happily sharing how our team and I will do it. Steal some of those stories, but remember, there are other ways of doing it. This is not the way.
You put lots of love and effort into that book, and I saw how you built it up. You did a kind of a build-in public thing. You invited people. You kept us all up to date about what you're doing. It's a beautifully designed book. It's big. It looks great on coffee table. That's a lot of investment to put in the book. I get the contents. Great. Fantastic for the right people. But is this a business development tool? Is this a vanity project? Is this your life work? What is this? What were you hoping it to do?
That was always the first. That's business development. I can share that with clients and say, good to chat, good to meet. There's a book that gives you an insight into our world. So it's a calling card. I can't give people chocolate samples. I can't show them a website and they can download a sample. It goes back to that intangibility thing. But you can give them a sense of, faith and knowledge that this approach has worked before with other people that they can identify with. So 100% business development.
You know what else has worked before? The lightning round.
Oh, here we go. Let's go.
The lightning round.
Workshop or one-on-one?
Or workshop.
In-person or remote?
Oh my God. I want to say in person, but I've had so many good learnings from remote. Hang on a minute. I'm going to think about that harder. In person, because I've extrapolated what would 1,000 years of in person look like. That'd be amazing. 1,000 years of remote? Nah.
What is one question that always helps move towards clarity?
What would happen if nothing changed?
What's the biggest mistake people make in meetings and workshops?
Apologizing.
Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, I'm sorry I'm late. Oh God, I'm so sorry to bring you all together because we need to talk about this. I know that we're all busy. It's apologetic. Yeah, thank you for. I appreciate I'm taking up a lot of your time. It's all apologetic. Don't. It's interesting how we start to sort of label the narrative of our lives in a kind of apologetic fashion. You've called the meeting. They're busy. So are you.
I'm Dutch. We don't apologize. That helps. Structure or spontaneity?
Structure.
One thing that instantly improves a session.
Music.
Any particular genre of music you like?
Don't overthink it. Used to work with people. Well, you and I have both worked with people, curated this perfect playlist. It's like that. Just fill the room with noise. It's fine. That breaks the silence. Yeah.
I was that guy, Andy.
I made playlists
on the plane.
I'm gonna make the best playlist. No, ignore that. But the close to that would be images, drawings and images. So it's between the two, music and images. They're tickling the different senses. I've watched the impact of a piece of music that have on someone. They go, oh my God, I remember this from holiday. And all of a sudden something happens. So it's an instant free boost of energy and distraction over here whilst something else is going on over there. So it's that kind of parallel experience. Pictures do the same, but you can fill a room with music, whereas one person needs to engage with the image. So that's why I said music first.
What do you kids think you do?
I don't know what they think. I've taken my kids on a few projects. They now understand what I do, but I think they just think that I just herd cats all the time. They just say that I run meetings.
What is one habit every independent professional should build? So people work for themselves. What is one habit they should all build?
Engineered time off all forms of screen. It's not enough to say that because people will take a phone to a deck chair in the garden and look at the garden and then just get their phone out. So you have to structure it so that you are away from your phone. When I'm traveling into London on the train, I have my phone. I don't have it in my pocket. I have it in my bag, zipped up. So it's a bit of an effort to kind of get it out, and it can just sit there, and that forces me to read. Because if it's in my pocket and I'm reading and it goes, bzzzt, what are you going to do? You're going to look at your phone, aren't you? Okay. So get away from the screens in order for that subconscious to make the connections that it needs to do.
What do most clients get wrong when they ask for help?
I like the word wrong, so I'm going to replace the word wrong with do. What's the thing that clients do when they ask for help? So they have a habit of writing out what they think the issue is and explaining it to you, and the actual issue is something adjacent to it. So we would call that wrong, but we have the hindsight of being able to look into their world from behind the box. They're in the box, so that's what they do. So the starting brief isn't the actual brief. It's something adjacent to it.
Last one. If you had to start tomorrow, if you had to start all over again,
Okay.
What would you focus on first?
Is this with or without my learnings?
This is with all your wisdom and learning.
Keep the main thing, not worrying about, is this going to work? Of course it's going to work, because if you can go wrong, and that's your compass, right? Just keep going. So focus on the thing and not what other people think. That's vague.
Wise.
Yeah.
I'm going to think about that one for a while. It was a bit, as we used to say, beardy.
Yeah. It's like some kind of, I feel like some mysterious sage with a wise beard at the top of a mountain.
That's a beard stroker. I like it. Andy, we'll get into more of these things next time. For now, where can people find you?
They will be able to find me on LinkedIn. I occasionally look at my invites because at the moment I'm being bombarded with people trying to sell me everything from forklift trucks to Medicare to AI assistance, all of which I don't need. But if you're genuine, I will be able to sniff that out and make a connection to you. So thank you in advance, genuine people who are going to ask for my help.
Wonderful. I'll leave a link to your book as well. This is not the way. And thank you for letting us see some of your ways about how you go about things. It was an absolute pleasure having you here. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank
Andy
you,
Reid.
Joeri. I enjoyed the space that you gave me. It's a very rare gift to be able to host someone on a podcast and not get talked at. So you've managed to smash that incredibly well. And I wish you all the very best with your other podcasts in the future. So thank you.
Nice. Very nice. Before I give you some of my thoughts and my ideas, I just want to say a massive thank you to Andy Reid for sharing here on this podcast. Make sure you go connect with him. I'll leave a link to the book. This is not the way for you as well. And while you're in the show notes, you might as well sign up to my weekly newsletter called The Solo Sauce with more ideas for people on their own solo journey. So here are a couple of thoughts that bubbled up while I was having the conversation. More often than not, whatever you think you're selling is not what people are buying. You might be selling a program or a sleek design or a bit of technology or an app. Cool. But most people don't care. What they want is their problem solved. They have a pain point somewhere. They have a frustration somewhere. And if you can help them solve that, that's what they care about. That's when their ears perk up. So find out what is the thing that's already frustrating the client before you even have the conversation. Then once you have a grip on that, you can articulate it in a way that makes them go, yeah, you get me. But then how you solve that problem or how you alleviate that pain, that's your expertise. So what is the actual problem you can solve? And can you articulate that in a way that your clients understand? Make it a great day. And I'll see you in the next episode.